What's up, Nerdferders? Welcome back to the N.A.P. It has been too long. We took a bit of a break. We are refreshed, and we're back, and with a crapload of fresh Marvel content to talk to you about. Not only that, we have brought along our special guest, Doug, from Grand Comic-Con to make Comic-Cons great again. That's what we're all here for. That's what we're all here for. Gentlemen, how are we doing today?
Very well, thank you.
Doing fantastic. It's good to see Doug again. It's been a minute.
Josh, I'm digging the hat. I'm digging the hat big time.
Thank you.
Doug, I'm digging the hat. This is good stuff. So, Doug, this is not your first time on here. The last time we were doing the same thing. We were talking about Grand Comic-Con. Once again, I'd be happy to make this an annual thing prior to the event. This is a good way to go about it. Now, obviously, things were quite chaotic for the last couple of years in relation to just about any Comic-Con event whatsoever.
Right.
And so we definitely wanted to make sure that we were able to get in and chat with you a little bit about some of the changes that you had to go through, but I'm definitely going to let Josh take the lead on this one because I know he's chomping at the bit to talk to you about this stuff. And Josh knows more than I do.
Well, only because I've been to it before. I was lucky enough to go to years 1 and 2, and they're fantastic. They're down in Grand Island, and I've been waiting for year 3, and we've had some hiccups, and of course COVID and everything. So why don't you tell us?
First, so.
Yeah. Oh, you're going this year. That's awesome.
I'm going to go this year.
Well, there you go.
I'm going to go this year.
So you want to tell us about year 3 there, Doug?
Well, of course, like you said,
Josh,
we've
F11.
had some challenges here the last couple of years, and kind of feel like like we're going to talk about Marvel here in a little while. I feel like we're rebooting so many times. People don't know where we're at anymore. But things are hopefully starting to clear up a little bit, and people are getting back out in the public. So we thought, hey, let's go ahead and try and get one in 2021. So we went ahead, got to go ahead. Of course, we are affiliated with the Grand Theater in Grand Island, Nebraska. A lot of grand going on there. So we thought, hey, let's go ahead and get one put together for 2021. So we are at the same area, but not the same building. We are going to be located at the Fauner Park Concourse, which is just a stone's throw away from the Aurora Cooperative Pavilion where we were for year 2. We'll be looking at October 1st through the 3rd this year. Friday night, October 1st, will be our grand opening ceremony. And Josh, you've been there before, so we have our grand opening ceremony down at the Grand Theater. We show a free movie, and we tell you a little bit about what to expect for the weekend. So we're really excited, looking forward to getting back out in front of everybody and seeing all of our con family.
Do you know what? Oh, go ahead, Seth. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
I was going to ask what the movie is this year. Do you know yet?
Well, we have a pretty good idea, and what I'll
you don't have to announce it here. That's fine.
No, I'm good. This will be a spoiler for everybody.
Okay.
If everything goes according to plan, we will probably be looking at The Last Starfighter, which is what we had really lined up for Grand Comic-Con 3 had we had it in 2020. So, old sci-fi, how fun is it, And how many people in the new generation have not seen this movie at all, regardless if it's been at a theater or at home? So we thought it'd be a fun one to show. The great family film, a lot of fun.
Now, the first question.
Absolutely love The Last Starfighter. Heck yes. So good.
The first question that I'm sure is going to come to a lot of people's mind is, not necessarily how COVID has affected things previously, but how COVID has affected the planning towards the new date. What kind of protocols you guys are going to have in place? Any more specific requirements that you're going to lay out based off of vendors and guests?
Well, at this time, of course, we're going to follow anything that the CDC requires,
sure.
Local health codes, things like that. We have currently reopened the Grand Theater, and we're under no restrictions at this time. So, we certainly hope everybody's out there getting vaccinated, whether that's your Some people don't want to get vaccinated. We're hoping that everybody does. If you feel comfortable wearing a mask, highly encouraged. And if you don't want to come out in a crowd, certainly, stay home. That's fine. It's understandable. We're trying to do the best that we can, but the world keeps turning. So we just want to try and have an event. People that are willing to come out, as long as we're following whatever safety guidelines are put before us, we'll certainly do that to try and minimize any potential spreading of virus. But we'll do the best we can and still hopefully have a good event.
I remember the last time I was talking to you, there was some Comic-Con on the East Coast, I think, that was using like a fog machine sanitizer that was going around at night and in the mornings. And I was like, oh, that looks like some apocalyptic shit right there. But I think we've moved on from that. And I'm excited, man. I'm going to be at Planet Comic-Con a month before down in Kansas City. And I know for a long time, you guys hinged on whether or not they were doing it. They're definitely a larger con, but they're close by and they're in the region. And so I'm excited that you're finding a way to make this happen and that it's the full con because I think a lot of people have missed that. So it's kind of like the fall of con. All the spring and the summer cons have kind of been pushed to this fall, and it's nice to see you guys in the ranks.
Yeah, well, actually, when we went ahead with the date, we were pretty early on about that was the date that was going to be available. With the state fairgrounds where Fauna Park is located at, of course, State Fair, the Nebraska State Fair will be basically in August. Everything is booked up at the facility from August and September. So it's like, hey, get us in as soon as we can in October. First week when it's available, let's go ahead and do it. But that leads into another thing that you're talking about, where everything is kind of getting backed up towards the end of the year. So it made it a little bit difficult when I start talking to other people about, are you willing to come back to Grand Comic-Con? And other people are committed to other cons. The same weekend that we are having our con, SuperCon in Sioux City is taking place as well. And, so we have a few people that normally would be at our con are going to be part up there.
Yeah, well, and the next weekend is New York Comic-Con, which I'll be at. And I dropped out of C2E2 so I could be a yearly attendee to Grand Comic-Con. And so thank God New York didn't come up on there. But I work for a nonprofit. We normally have our big fundraiser at the nonprofit in the spring, and we had to bump it to the fall. But in 2022, we're letting our sponsors know and everybody that supports us that, hey, we are going back to our normal spring schedule. So do you guys have plans for 2022? Is it going to be kind of the same timeline, or are you going to try to hit back to your normal timeline?
Yeah, we want to get back into the swing of things. I really like the spring aspect, really before the big con season takes off. So yeah, that's our goal. It's certainly late March, and of course we're always worried about the weather, but it seems like a pretty safe bet at that point.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear. Well, Seth, you've never been there. You got any questions?
Yeah, well, I mean, the only information that I really have is based off of the last discussion that we had, but and I mean, like you said, this is like very early on, and I don't think enough people really can really like comprehend how much actually goes into throwing an event of this scale under any circumstances, let alone during a pandemic. But is there, and on top of that, you're also doing it in a less densely populated area, being in Grand Island, kind of like centrally located in the state, but still kind of like you're a little bit out there in regards to the way that Nebraska would refer to like their big city. I mean, everybody already assumes that Nebraska is just corn anyway. But like, what is the aside from dealing with like COVID restrictions, what's kind of like the big challenge and sort of like the big draw that you guys try to bring to the table every year to kind of really incentivize that travel?
Well, being in central Nebraska, people are used to driving, so typically not a challenge for people from this area, to drive 1, 2, 3 hours to get here. When we're dealing with people from Omaha or beyond, it's really kind of getting over the conception of what does Central Nebraska bring. So again, when we put on the event, we're run by fans, and it's kind of a passion for us. So we have a lot of fun, and we try to make it fun for everybody, not only the attendees, but the vendors and the creators as well. And, we're a no admission event, so we want to bring people in. People get to save their money when they're coming in the door, and they can turn around and spend it with the actual creators. So there's that incentive as well. So, when people are set up, hey, people are coming in, they have money to spend, and, we try and put that personal touch as well. So again, we have a lot of fun. We have some silly contests. We have some plans to do this fall as well. So yeah, I think it's just what can we do to bring people in and keep them there?
Are there any guests in particular that you guys are bringing to the table this year?
Well, we have Jim Mesling coming back, of course. Bob Hall sounds like he's going to be here. He was kind of on the fence at first. It sounded like he might have some other plans, but it looks like he's available. So we're kind of finalizing some details there. Andy
so for people who don't know, where would they recognize those names from?
Oh, Bob Hall's a legend. Yeah.
Yeah, Bob Hall, worked for Marvel forever. He was an editor, does a lot of art. Fantastic. Great stories, when you're talking to him. So a lot of fun. And he does a lot of Midwest cons. So I know he's been at Planet before, and from the Lincoln area. So a lot of people are familiar with who he is. Jim Mesling from over in Des Moines, I believe, is his home. Met him a few years ago. Seen him at a ton of cons. He does Topps trading cards, but
I was gonna say, I think he does a lot of MTG art.
Yeah, it just fantastic when you talk to him. Nicest guy in the world. Got quite a bit of his stuff, and just love it. Andy Parks, first time for him to be coming to our event, so really excited about that.
Nice.
Spoke to him several times at Ocon, Planet Comic Con, so it's just gonna, hey, let's get it lined up. I really, really want to have you here. So of course he does DC art, great stuff, and Daryl Skelton is coming. So Daryl also does a lot of Midwestern cons. Fantastic stuff. First time for him as well. So yeah, we're really excited about the people that we're bringing in, and everybody is so personable. So all these people coming in, and they may not be familiar with their work, but you can go right up and you can talk to them, and you can hear these great stories. Daryl has fantastic stories. I met him at Ocon a couple of years ago, and yeah, I could have sat there all day. I mean, I was looking around for, hey, give me a chair so I can just pull up here and let's just talk. I tell these stories about Stan Lee and his, experiences in the comic industry, and that's fantastic. I'm a comic book guy from way back, and just being able to hear these stories. I mean, growing up, I always wanted to be an artist for either Marvel or DC, and those were the only two options. Well, with the people that we're bringing in, or that you see at any cons, you can get these stories, and you can hear about, hey, what was it like to work at Marvel? What was it like to know Stan Lee or some of the other giants? Jack Kirby. Tell me some stories about Jack Kirby. And and I don't know if everybody appreciates the history. And some people have different things. They love the movies, but for me, comic books. And I mean, if I could hear stories about Jack Kirby, yeah, I'll sit there all day.
Bob Hall and I closed down a bar in Grand Island a couple years ago on the Friday night after I think Superman was playing, and then we went over to the bar, just stayed there till it closed. And I mean, that man has worked for DC and Marvel. He's got stories from both of those studios. He's got stories from SNL because he used to work in the same building. And he'd have people pulling him away from his work table to go hang out with Chevy Chase and everybody for after parties. And he had some really cool stories. He's just a great guy. He'll talk your head off if you want him to. And he's a really kind dude and really talented guy. And so, yeah.
Well, the other really fun thing, sorry to interrupt, but yeah, we were at the hotel after Saturday night. And so a couple of us were just down in the lounge, and we're around this little table, one of those little bar high top tables, it's only about 2 feet long or 2 feet round. And so some of the other con participants started coming in, and here comes Bob Hall, has his sketch pad with him. He's just sitting there talking to us, just sketching. And it's like, guys realize how cool this is just watching him? It's like, I couldn't believe
Right?
it. It's like, yeah, just geeking out, fanboy stuff all over.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Well, I'm super stoked about it. I think it's a great con, and now, I mean, not to diss on any other cons, certainly not what I mean by it, but you guys are pretty much the premier con in Nebraska. I mean, Omaha Con, OCon is no more,
Right.
And Lincoln has like a book fair, but it's not really a Comic-Con. So as far as I know, I'm pretty sure Grand Comic-Con is the only legit Comic-Con currently.
Anime Con,
that's right. There is that.
They have theirs this year, but they're actually over at the Mid-America Center over in Council Bluffs. But
I saw that.
And they're a little bit different crowd, and we have a lot of crossover between the two, and they do a great job. I mean, I love going over there. But yeah, between Denver and really Des Moines and Kansas City, there really isn't anything. So we're trying to take that next step. So that's one thing that we're kind of looking at, and we'll get some feedback from you, Josh, and other people that are at the con this year. It's like, where do you want to see us go? Because we can, I like to tease people. We're kind of like Reno, Nevada. We're the biggest little con around, but if we want to get bigger, we're going to have to take a look at that. And, does that hurt us? Do we kind of lose some of the character that we are? So we'll try and figure out where we want to go. But, we're just having fun as we go and making it up all along the way. And, we have great people that are part of that, not only the volunteers, but everybody that participates. This is absolutely, it was never meant to be my con or just my ideas. We get feedback from everybody, and hey, let's make it happen and have fun. And I think that's really kind of translated towards everybody that comes in. It's like, wow, this is really something unique. So we're just trying to play on that as much as we can.
Yeah, well, you guys get a lot of people from a lot of different regions, and I think it really helps that, they're willing to travel if they don't have to pay to get in the door. I mean, I've seen cons that are smaller than Grand Comic-Con that just a family of 4 would cost them a hefty penny to get in there for a day, let alone a 2-day event. And it's nice to see people traveling from all over to go here, and it's nice that you let them in the door without paying a dime so that they can really enjoy themselves. And if they're wanting to buy something, they're that much more free to do. Or, if they just want to hang out for the day, they can without having to spend money. So that's a really cool thing. It speaks to you guys' character and the hard work you guys do behind the scenes to keep it that way.
Well, and we've had a lot of people that Grand Con was really their first time to be a vendor or be a creator. Hey, I've been a painter or I've been an author and I've never shown my work to anybody. Now I have a venue that I can do that, and people are able to come up and speak to me, and they're buying my product. So it's really a good way to kind of dip their toe in and see what it's like to be a vendor or a creator and show their goods to people. Yeah.
Well, I'm super stoked for this year. Seth, you got anything more before we break into our Black Widow talk?
Not at the moment. I kind of, like I said, it's going to be my first experience with it. And so I kind of want my first experience to be like, I want to go in a little bit blind. So like, I don't want to ask too many questions especially when it's stuff that I could probably like find out like right off on my own. Just by going.
Well, and I'm so stoked.
I just gotta get myself out there.
I'm stoked that The Last Starfighter, unless something changes, is going to be in the theater. I can't wait. Oh my gosh, that film. I love that film to death. We could do a whole podcast on that film and my love for that film, but
who doesn't love a gung-ho iguana?
Right. Yeah, real quick. That was one of the films that we had on VHS back in the day, but it wasn't like VHS like the original. It was the stuff we taped off TV.
Right.
So for the first 15 years of my life, I'd watched that movie so many times, maybe even 20 years of my life, so many times, but it was the TV cut. It was the TV cut with all the commercials with the bad quality that was recorded off, whatever, Fox movies that night or whatever. And then when they came out with the remastered version, when I was in my 20s, I bought that thing on Blu-ray, and it was like I was watching that movie for the first time. There were so many scenes that weren't in the TV cut. It was so crisp. I mean, it was just gorgeous. And then the Alamo here had it in theaters, so I took the wife to go see it. But that was the only time I'd ever see it in theaters. So anytime I can see that thing on the big screen, Hell yeah, I will be there. I can't wait.
There you go.
Anyway,
it'll be the second time I've seen the movie.
Oh, really?
Nice. Yeah, I only watched it the once, and it was way back. I'm talking like mid '90s.
Oh goodness.
I was a little lad when I first saw it.
Well, what better venue to see it in than the Grand Theater? I'm telling you, man, the Grand Theater. It's a sexy little theater. It's really nice. It's really cool. All the happening people are there.
If things go the way that they've been going, it'll be the first theater sit-in that I've done since pre-pandemic era.
Oh wow! All right.
Be sure to ask for the tour when you're there as well.
Yes, for sure. I need that tour because I'm writing a little thing involving Grand. So anyway, we got some other movies to talk about. Mainly Black Widow.
To talk about. Oh boom! Look at you.
Look at me. That's right. Black Widow came out 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. You wouldn't know it this weekend because it didn't have a good weekend this weekend. But it had a really strong first weekend. And it was the first Marvel movie we've had in, 2 years? Or at least a year and a half. And it was definitely a long time coming for Black Widow. They've been trying to make a Black Widow movie since long before the MCU. I watched this mini documentary today on this.
Had they been trying, or had the fans been like,
both?
For it?
There was a Black Widow script, a rated R Black Widow script that was going around Hollywood for a while after Blade did really well, and this was before the whole commitment to the MCU, before Iron Man, and they were looking at making this Black Widow movie. And the script is pretty intense, but it never made it off. And then the MCU started, and we got Black Widow and Iron Man 2, and fans have been wanting her own solo movie ever since. So now we finally have it. 20-something films later, we finally have it. Doug hasn't seen this, but he said it's okay to talk about. So, absolutely. Seth, what are your non-spoiler? We'll put up the spoiler tag when we get to there, but what's your non-spoiler thoughts on this film?
Rent it.
You're starting out the gate. Okay.
Rent it first, because this one is divisive, and I will say that it is not as it's not as divisive as what the internet made it out to be, because I saw some early reviews for this film, and there was some people were fucking tanking this film hard. And I think a lot of that was actually just because of that deep-seated aggression that they had towards her not getting a character until post-Endgame, where we know the fate of this character already. And I gotta admit, that's a big point of frustration for me too, but not enough for me to be like, okay, is the cinematic value of this film completely shot at this point? Then it's like, no, of course it's not. So
that's kind of funny that you said it like that, though, that people might be more upset because they've been waiting for so long, not because they didn't think she should have a movie, but that they thought she should have had a movie years ago.
They had waited for it for so long, and then they didn't get it. And then when they did get it, a major element in the film was taken away. And that is, there wasn't a full understanding. Obviously, in Black Widow's first film, you're not expecting that they're going to kill her off. And so the worry about her fate isn't necessarily up for question. But the film also doesn't do the best of jobs of making you connect with the other characters, except for Florence Pugh's character, who is Yelena Belova. Mm-hmm. It's got all of your classic Marvel elements, though. I mean, you've got excellently shot action scenes, but they also include an exaggerated suspension of disbelief that you have to subscribe to in order to go in on. It's got classic Marvel style comedy, but in some places it's actually kind of unwelcome in the places where it's at, and it sort of takes away from what should have been like a good moment or like a really good serious dramatic moment. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, it's got Scarlett Johansson. It's got the Black Widow, the character that we have been growing with for like 10 years now, and begging to see all of this, begging to see like more into her backstory. Sao Paulo, fucking Budapest, like all of these background elements that like are constantly being hinted at. And then it's not a story where you get really any answers about any of that stuff. So it's like we're getting Easter egged to death, to a certain degree. It's like, wow, okay, this is not what we wanted to subscribe to. So I mean, it's got its greats and it's got its shits, like throughout this film, and it really kind of depends. And like that's every movie, honestly.
Sure.
But you've kind of got to balance that out based off of the expectations that people had going into this, and unfortunately people's expectations were really high, and Marvel had been hyping it up like I cannot remember a Marvel film that got more press and more advertisements and more exclusive posters posted to their Instagram than this movie did.
Well, to be fair, I think that was, I mean, it did get delayed 3 times before, so like, over, a year and a half. So I think that's probably part of it.
It's absolutely understandable the length that they had to go to in order to re-garner the interest that people would have in this film after being delayed constantly. And also after having just about every single minute of the film posted in some sort of exclusive clip just to keep people's interest. Mm-hmm. But after like the movie suffered in a few areas, and a lot of that is going to be due to the hype from the marketing and the wait that people had to go into without even the pandemic be considered. They waited way too long to make a movie about Black Widow. They waited way too long to tell more about her story. And because that expectation was so high, and then the littlest bit of letdown is going to have a really big impact with those diehard Black Widow fans. And I think that's where a lot of the negative reviews are coming from. I don't think that they're quite as negative as they should be, because again, this is a Marvel film. We're not assessing a Martin Scorsese film here. Like, we are talking about a comic book movie here. And so there's a lot of elements there to where you kind of have to remind yourself of that, even though this isn't a super powered character. But like I said, some of the reviews went a little bit too far. Right now, it is currently sitting at a 6.9 out of 10 on IMDb, 81% on Rotten Tomatoes, 67% on Metacritic, and 90% of Google users liked this movie. So it's still not even the most divisive film out of the Marvel franchise. So
well, it's interesting that you mentioned all those things. So on Disney Plus, which this co-premiered at, it premiered in the theaters and also premiered.
And what I watched it on.
Yeah, so you could buy it on Disney Plus, and depending on your situation and how many people you watch it with, that could have been cheaper than going to the theaters. Let's see here. JBG 1984 says, "I just got home from seeing Black Widow in Dolby Atmos." Nice. That's how I saw it as well. Dolby Atmos is definitely a sexy way to see it. I wonder if that's Jared or not. It looks different. So Disney Plus app has a trending list, and their trending list, like Twitter, it's a pretty big one. It goes all the way up to 25. And as of this weekend, the second weekend from Black Widow being out, Loki was trending number 2. Falcon and the Winter Soldier and WandaVision were still in the top 25. They were in the 20s. So they still made the top 25. Black Widow was not in the top 25 trending in its second week. That's not good. I mean, it kind of speaks to that, or maybe just more people went and saw it in the theaters. This was Disney talked about their numbers last week. This was the first time they released the numbers that a film did on their app. They didn't do that with Mulan. They didn't do that with Raya and the Last Dragon. They didn't do that with a lot of their other films, but they did it with Black Widow. Of course, this weekend they were silent. They didn't talk about those numbers, probably because they were disheartening. But
there's a lot of kid shows dominating the trending page for Disney Plus right now, though, too, because you got to remember there's a huge audience of parents who signed up for Disney Plus so they could have kid shows for their kids that are part of that franchise.
But an MCU feature film not being on there. Not being on there the second weekend, it's kind of crazy. Oh, it is Jared. It is Jared. I changed my profile picture to Joe Morton from Terminator 2 and he drops the bomb. Oh, I recognize the picture. Jared.
I just thought you got a really good tan.
My spoiler-free thoughts on this were I did go into it with a lot of expectations, both because I'm a big Black Widow fan, and because of the people they had behind it. When they announced that Kate Shorehand was going to be directing this, I was really excited. She's done a few films in the past that she's known for, like Lore, which was about Nazi youth, and Berlin Syndrome, which is a psychological thriller about like a girl that falls in love with somebody and then ends up being their captive. So I thought the themes from those movies could really transfer over to a really solid Black Widow film. When you talk about the psychological torture that these women go through, the manipulation, everything that Black Widow has hinted towards in her previous mentions throughout the MCU. There was a really strong scene with her and Bruce Banner in Age of Ultron, where she talks about the Red Room and what they did to her, and the fact that she can't have children, and how hard she is on herself about that, as well as all the manipulation and the torture she went through in her training, and the emotion on her face and everything. It was very, that was a very good scene. It wasn't the greatest movie, but that was a really good scene. And so the idea that they would do a solo movie for her, man, I wanted to see more of that. I wanted to see more of that emotion, and I wanted to see to what level Disney Marvel would go, because obviously this is a PG-13 movie. This isn't going to be too dark, but they've kind of teetered that line in the past. So I was excited. I really loved the first 16 minutes of the film, and then it kind of went downhill from there. It's not the worst MCU film, and even the worst MCU film is better than a lot of other films that come out. So take everything that I say with a grain of salt, but I would consider it in the bottom tier of films. I felt like, as much as the advertising that Disney did for it, the actual movie itself felt throwaway in nature. It felt like they were just doing it to get fans to shut up about the Black Widow thing. It was a big Disney Plus commercial. And outside of Yelena, who we know is going to be in future Marvel properties, nothing else about this film felt like it will ever reach outside of this film. I don't believe we'll see any of these other characters ever again. And if we do, I'll be hugely surprised, especially with Kevin Feige coming out recently saying they're no longer doing long-term contracts with characters. So if they're not doing long-term contracts with their main characters, I seriously doubt they're going to do it with their side characters. So the film was a letdown for me. It's not a shit fest. There's still plenty of stuff to like about it. You were talking about rankings. I would give it like a 2.5 out of 5. But I like parts of it, but overall, the more I thought about it, and even immediately I was disappointed, but the more I thought about it, the more disappointed I got. So,
it made me like Captain Marvel even less, because Captain Marvel got a film before Black Widow did, and Captain Marvel is useless.
Well,
there's no point in her being established in the MCU prior to Endgame.
Yeah.
Prior to Infinity War, she did absolutely nothing in Infinity War. She wasn't even in Infinity War. Actually, was she in the post credit? No, she wasn't in the post credit scene.
No.
That was like a completely different thing. She was in Infinity War in her own post credit scene.
Yeah,
which was dumb.
Doug, I want to pass things to you, but I don't really know what to. I mean, you haven't seen the film. Are you super stoked to see this film?
Are you going to rent it now, or are you going to go and see it in the theater?
Well,
you run a theater. You're going to wait until it's like second play at your place.
And that's the thing. I kind of have an unfair advantage that I have the biggest home movie theater around.
Right.
No, I do look forward. Unfortunately, work had just kind of taken over, and I didn't have time to go see it. I do want to see it in the theater. I don't want to see it at home. Some movies I really enjoy seeing them on the big screen, of course.
Sure.
When you've got one.
I definitely think that she has deserved a movie for the longest time. As one of the original Avengers in the movie, pay her the respect of giving her a full-length feature film. And again, I don't know how to speak to some of the criticisms that you have, because I haven't seen it yet, but a lot of times I think it's difficult for when people are writing superhero movies. I don't know if they have a comics background, or I don't know if they understand who the character actually is. And it's a totally different vehicle, of course, with the movies. But it's difficult. I think it speaks a little bit to a female-led movie as well. I think historically, I think they've not done quite as well. Because when you have the little boys that go see the movie, or the guys that go see the movie, they may not respond to it as well. I definitely don't think it could be worse than Captain Marvel. I was not a big fan of the Captain Marvel movie and how they treated that character, and just so many things wrong about that. But that's a discussion for another time. But I do look forward to it. I think Scarlett, I think she does a great portrayal. Iron Man 2, I loved her portrayal of the first time that we saw Black Widow.
Everybody did. Those were this fandom around her started right off the bat, without even knowing much about her.
Yeah,
and especially for people who didn't even know that she was part of the comic universe before that. I was like it's just.
And of course, the first Avengers movie, I thought she was done very well. So no, I look forward to it.
I feel like we shouldn't talk spoilers.
No, I don't think we should. I think Seth and I can get together later this week and talk. I'd love to have a spoiler conversation with you, Seth, about it, but non-spoilery.
I don't think we should do it here. Like I really don't. I know you signed off on it, Doug, but I really don't think.
Yeah.
Like especially if you're looking forward to it.
I'll cover my ears. You guys go ahead.
Oh no. No, that'd be boring because I want to talk. I want you to involved in the conversation. You can't really be involved in spoiler but I will. What you mentioned about female superheroes. I mean, we know that Disney's executives in the past thought that a Disney Marvel female superhero film would be a disaster, and that's why we haven't got it for this year. They went on record saying that they're not in power anymore over at Disney Marvel, and maybe that speaks to why we got it now. But honestly, you're talking about the previous times that we saw a Black Widow in the MCU. She was great as a secondary character. She was great in Iron Man 2. She was amazing in Captain America Winter Soldier, which was another spy-oriented film. Russo brothers came in, changed the tone of the MCU, brought her in when they didn't really need her character. But her character didn't feel throwaway. It felt essential to the film. It felt really strong, supportive, and I just loved her character in that film. And I think they just kept on, making her valuable and worth the screen time ever since that point. And this is kind of spoilery, but it's not really spoilery. We don't get any cameos in this film from other characters, and I think that kind of speaks to, the fact that Disney just didn't give a shit about this film. I mean, they're more than willing to throw her in the other films. There was a couple scenes in here where I was waiting for Captain America to step out, or where I was waiting for Clint Barker Barton to step out. Even if it would just be these little things, but I felt like even the scene itself was setting up their cameo, and then it didn't happen. And then it didn't even happen. And it felt like Disney just didn't want to spend the money on it. Like they wanted their Disney Plus commercial, and that was it. And that really, it just felt bad that she was a very strong part in the supporting roles that she was in. And then in her send-off movie, which there's a thing at the end of this film that it could not be a send-off. They left room open. If there could be another film. And they could always just keep on going back in time and do more films with her. But the fact that they couldn't bring in one cameo felt like they just didn't care.
Like they're still sort of doing it. I mean, we've had two shows that have been post Endgame, but we've had two shows in a movie that have been post Endgame. But now we're seeing Loki, which is not post Endgame,
right?
Regardless of what some people have thought, and it's caused a little bit of confusion as far as they're concerned. But the 5 years between Infinity War and Endgame in the Marvel timeline, which I don't think they're going to touch on based off of information from these other shows that we're diving into here pretty soon. They've got a lot of ground that they could cover in there. But also with some implications that they have opened up with some of these other series and the direction that the cinematic universe seems to be going. It might not be the end of this character, and they're almost treating it like it won't be.
There wasn't a tone of, man, savor this. Really,
there wasn't a lot of finality.
We already know she dies, so I was expecting half of the film to be like really bringing that home, bringing on the tears.
Yeah,
I never felt that in the film, so I wouldn't put it past him. I mean, the director himself has been all like, "Oh yeah, we put this in the film. Who knows what could happen?" If there is another film, I don't believe this director should be involved. I was very disappointed in it.
Yeah,
and again, we'll talk spoilers later, but we live in a world where the Bourne movies exist, the Bond movies exist, the Mission Impossible movies exist. Other films about female assassins out of Russia exist, like Anna, which just came out 2 years ago, or what's her name from the Hunger Games? She just came out with it was a Russian. Jennifer Lawrence came out with a Russian assassin movie, ballerina history and everything a couple years ago. All those things show that you can do a grounded spy movie with a non-superpowered lead. However, I felt that this movie just forgot that she was a human, because she should have died 10 times in this film. And I just don't think they know how to do superpowered beings, but it didn't feel like they knew how to do a grounded spy film. And I think they, maybe somebody like some of these other directors who have done things like that could have made a better film. But I want to move on because we got Doug here and I want to get his thoughts on the other big Marvel thing. And maybe this other big Marvel thing is the reason why Black Widow Weekend 2 has been a dud. Because normally when you get an MCU film, you don't have another MCU film for another couple months, so you savor this. You go back to the theater weekend after weekend, except in this case, we got an MCU film, and then a couple days later, we got the next MCU entry, which was the final episode of Loki. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's the issue, that we just moved on to the next thing. But Loki finished its first season this past week. And I want to get everybody's thoughts on it. Doug, you've seen the whole season. What did you think of season 1?
I'm gonna let you guys take the lead on that. I will be right back.
All right. I really enjoyed it. And what I've been seeing on the 3 that we'll talk about tonight, the Disney Plus series, I wasn't hooked like a lot of people were right off of the first episode of each of the series. It took me a little bit of a build up to see which direction they were going. But as it kind of gained momentum and some pieces were falling into place, at first I was really, honestly, I was a little bit confused, and I didn't know which direction that they were going. But then when it finally started to play itself out, I really started enjoying it. Some of the Easter eggs that were showing up in the later episodes, I mean, I was laughing out loud, and if I may throw a spoiler out there, the Thanos copter. When I saw that on the helicopter, I couldn't keep from laughing out loud. And as silly as it is, if you've been around comics for a long time and you have ever seen that picture of Thanos in that helicopter,
yes.
Yeah. So that wow, they really did that.
Yeah, there's a lot of Easter eggs in this show, and the nice thing is that it worked for this show. A show where the whole premise is different timelines, different variants, different versions of the things that we've grown to know and love. This was like, especially for those that didn't grow up with the comics, this was like a peek into the more craziness of the comics. I don't think anybody that just went and saw the movies and saw Endgame and everything would have ever thought that there was a comic out there with Thanos in a copter that gets arrested by police at the end of the issue and everything. So this or a frog version of Thor, there was a lot of those Easter eggs in this show, and this was the perfect show to just sprinkle that shit in, and I really did appreciate that. You talked about the first episode being a little, kind of lost, is you weren't sure if you were getting into it. I felt the same way. And after seeing the other shows this year so far, WandaVision had 9 episodes, Falcon and the Winter Soldier had 6 episodes, and then Loki had 6 episodes. Even though they're hour-long episodes, I was like, man, how long are you going to get to it? And are you going to wait too long? And then by the time I get into it, I'm not going to be into it, So I thought, without getting into spoilers, that it had a kind of a slower start, but it was intriguing enough that kept me going. And of course, Tom Hiddleston's just charismatic performance. Absolutely. He sells this so much. You can just watch him for days. It was just so different. And man, we were just talking about Black Widow. For the majority of this show, CGI and the money looked great. I mean, it was pretty strong. There were some visuals every once in a while, but for 6 hours, it was strong. There was some stronger CGI in this film or in this series than there were in the Black Widow film. I think that just speaks to how much faith they had in this show. Seth, what non-spoiler thoughts do you have?
If you had been holding out for any Marvel content, and then you came back and you watched Black Widow, and you're like, "Fuck, that really." Watch Loki. That'll give you your hope back. I thoroughly enjoyed Loki. Not every episode, but I never had a. So it was an interesting compare and contrast because, like you said, like we normally don't, like after a Marvel film, we normally don't have any Marvel content to take in like immediately after that. Didn't really even get to take a breath,
right?
Because when this came out, it was like the finale for this show is just right around the corner, and then they had a weird date switch that they were doing specifically. I'm pretty sure it's because Star Wars' The Bad Batch was being done on Fridays. And so that took the original time slot that they were actually doing. And so you're catching the show on Wednesdays, which kind of might have served as like sort of a double experiment. It was like, all right, Friday seemed to be like the hot day for engagement. Let's see how Wednesdays do. And then they make this swap kind of last minute. Like they sort of announced it just like I think it was like a few weeks before they actually got going. And so like every theme inside and outside of this show is Marvel kind of experimenting with how they want to do things here on out. Like this is where they tried all their new stuff. Like every new element, like this is where they decided to finally explain the direction that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is going in. This is kind of like the big project that they had ready right around the same time as that investor presentation. This was one of those shows that they knew was like, all right, this is going to come out here pretty soon. We get a couple movies. I think we get 2 more movies before the end of this year. But as far as like their Disney Plus efforts, like this was kind of like the final chapter of it. And I mean, if they were saving the best for last, I can't really say that just yet. But man, strong contender here. Because,
well, they still have Hawkeye coming from Disney Plus, so that's
sure. But is that this year too? I think that's next year.
That might be next year. They certainly still have plenty of MCU content, like you said. It's either 2 or 3 films by the end of this year. I'm thinking it's 3.
Far From No Way Home comes out in December of this year, and I think Legend of Shang-Chi.
But doesn't Doctor Strange come out in between those 2?
Multiverse of Madness is 2022.
Oh, okay. All right. Never mind. So we got 2 more films this year.
Multiverse of Madness. I had a tab pulled up. It is March.
Okay. So we got 2 more films this year. But yeah, I mean, for all of this content, WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, almost back to back with barely any time in between there. It's been an interesting 6 months. 6 months for Marvel.
But I mean, with as far as all the external elements aside, the internal elements of this show were excellent. I will agree that they kind of had sort of that slow burn to start off, but that's the same formula they had with the other shows. They kind of have a almost an explanatory first act. Like most of the first act in WandaVision was not explanatory at all. They left you completely in the dark as far as what was going on. And then episode 4 comes in and boom, you're hooked on this show now. Congratulations. And then Falcon and Winter Soldier, They had their first 3 episodes, which were kind of meh. I mean, they had some great moments in each episode, and like they had just enough in there to be like, okay, I don't really know if I like this show yet or not. And then that 4th episode comes in, and you've got Bucky crying and being freed and all that shit. You're like, holy shit, okay. All
Whatever the Isaiah Bradley episode was, that was the one that was like, oh, here we go.
I'm pretty sure that was episode 4.
Okay.
I think they might have been digging in earlier than that. I can't remember, but yeah, episode 4, boom, comes in, and then they smack you with it, and it was amazing. And then Loki, here again, which was a gamble for Falcon Winter Soldier, because we're only talking about 6 episodes there. But they did it again here with Loki. They had their first episode, which started off exactly the way that we expected it to, with the scene from Endgame. And I think they played it a little bit better with this series, with all of their promotional material, because you could watch all of the trailers that they had put out there and not really understand what was going to go on, which in true Loki form, I don't think even if they had told you what was going to happen, they would have stuck with it. They would have played the trickster role. And I think that they did a good job of getting you hooked. I mean, Owen Wilson played his character brilliantly. Loki, of course, I mean, Tom Hiddleston is going to own. It's kind of like we talked about before with some other Marvel characters. I mean, you can't picture anybody but Tom Hiddleston playing that version of Loki. And I have to say that version of Loki because
we got a few other ones. Yeah.
There's all sorts of craziness. And at this point, I'm not even going to call that a spoiler, because that memes everywhere. There's a lot of craziness. There's a lot of that cosmic energy, and I'm really excited for it, because that is the side of Marvel that I am wildly interested in. The Earthbound feeling that we have been toying with for the majority of the Infinity Saga was great, but as soon as we started inching closer and closer towards working around the Celestials, working around the Skrulls and the Kree war, the Secret Wars, the Secret Invasion, the possible implications towards with the Celestials being involved in there and all that stuff, like there was like hints towards Galactus and some of the stuff that we can end up dealing with through there. Some of the hints that the Guardians of the Galaxy dropped in. It's like they were teasing us with this kind of stuff for a while, and now hard stop. And then Marvel's jumping right into the deep end with all this cosmic stuff, and I'm stoked for it. And then Loki comes in and opens the can of worms for all of that. And it's and I think the timing is perfect.
Yeah,
I think the timing is absolutely perfect for it. But that's about as much as I can say. Like, I've got some concerns which we'll talk about in the spoiler side, but my last thought of spoiler free is that you cannot skip out on this show. I feel like you could probably be okay watching future properties if you missed WandaVision, maybe. That one's kind of a hard one. I feel like you could probably still keep up if you had skipped out on Falcon and Winter Soldier, but you cannot skip out on Loki and then continue on with the Marvel franchise without the information. I feel like Loki is too important of a component.
Well, I was wrong about Doctor Strange coming out in November, but I was right about 3 films from MCU coming out this year. We totally forgot about the Eternals.
Yeah.
The Eternals come out in November. And they had one teaser trailer that came out in which they said, we've stepped aside for all things, but now we have to come and do something. And I'm wondering if this event at the end of Loki is the thing that kicks that off. And we'll talk about that. But first, we're going to talk about spoilers here. I want to talk about something that Seth mentioned because the way this show starts off is we're seeing that scene from Endgame with Loki getting the what am I trying to say? Grabs the Tesseract, yep, and bails out, and that's the beginning of this. So this is not the Loki that we have grown with over the past 20 plus years. This is the Loki from the Avengers film, the hating, killing, just grimy looking evil dude, Loki, not the one that's grown with us. So
he's grumpy Loki.
He's the dude, bow down or I'll kill you. He looks like a snake when he's all sweaty in the dark, and he's gross evil Loki. So I want to know, did they do enough job?
I know where you're going with this.
Did they do enough job taking evil Loki to the likable character that he is at the end of this 6-episode arc? Because he definitely is likable. Did they do the work to get him there, or did they kind of cheat and just kind of hope that you just want that Loki that you've grown with in the MCU to come back quicker? Doug, what do you think?
Show alone.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Seth.
Okay, so with this show alone and the information that you have with this show alone, no, they do not. But an important element that we have to remember is that when Loki has gone through an arc throughout the entirety of the MCU, and we got to remember that prior to the events of this show, we had 3 films where his character was very prominent, and in those and in the first 2 Thor films, his level of evil was actually pretty low. I mean, when it really comes down to it, I mean, he's really just kind of a douche. But in the first one, he's really kind of gone mad with power after like quite a bit of provocation, not necessarily just out of his nature. I mean, he realizes that he was adopted for his entire life when all he wanted to be was his brother's equal. And then that whole world kind of gets thrown on its head in the first Thor film. And then in the second Thor film, he's dealing with the death of his mother, but trying to like placate that wasn't as big of a deal to him because he had just committed all of these horrible, horrible acts in Avengers. And so you get a couple hints about what might have actually been occurring at that point. But this version of Loki actually skips out on Thor: The Dark World as well. So the only information that we have is based off of the first Thor film and Avengers. And in Avengers, throughout almost the entirety of the film, and obviously prior to, based off of the events, Loki had a hold of the scepter containing the Mind Stone, which in Avengers we learn has some very severe negative effects on people who are under its influence, even if they're just holding it. And Loki was being manipulated by that power for who knows how long. And I mean, when you amplify an evil like his right off the bat, and especially with the amount of exposure that he had, it probably took a little while for that to subside. Mm-hmm. And so like for a little bit, he was still kind of like that douchebag, and then he's kind of like coming down off of that high horse. The influence of that stone has been taken away. He's vulnerabilities that he had never had before. Like his powers get taken away when he's in the TVA. Like he had an abrupt character shift, but it fits the theme for the events that he actually goes through.
Doug, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'll agree with that. I guess I really wanted him to stay a little more sinister for a while.
Right.
I really like that.
I think everybody did too.
Of the character. And by the end of season 1, I had a few questions about some of the choices that he made, it seemed like, but I certainly the charisma that Tom brings to that character, nobody else could play it. Absolutely not. I think it's very well played, and it was just really interesting the way that it went. But yeah, I'll totally agree with you on the kind of coming down from the Mind Stone and things like that. I did feel that it was pretty abrupt, though. That all of a sudden, all the feelings that he had.
They didn't do a great job of explaining that. They left a little bit too much of that left for the watcher's interpretation.
There's that one scene where he puts, Mobius puts him in that time loop to just gets his nuts kicked in for forever, and then Mobius also leaves him in the room to watch his future, to watch his mom die, to watch basically all the things that we watched Loki evolve into up until his death at the hands of Thanos. And that was something we grew with over time. And I know that they put that in there to show, so that he can see what we saw. But the idea that Loki, the mischievous Loki, the god of mischief, would see this potential future and then change versus think to himself, I can change that. Now that I know, I won't fall prey to that. I won't make those same choices. This version of Loki, I could see leaning more towards that versus, oh my gosh, I changed in that life. I should change in this life. I felt like in a show about time that there were things that really padded this show that they could have gotten rid of to really bring, force Loki to become the Loki that we've grown into, or at least close to it. And I thought that they just kind of bounced over that too quickly. And we all wanted the Loki that we like. So I think it was easy to accept. But the more you think about it, the more you're like, well, that doesn't make sense that the evil Loki from the Avengers would just become this way. The only thing that does make sense about his character choices in this show is that the one person he falls in love with is a version of himself. I mean, that makes
very on brand
sense. The narcissistic tones with that. I mean, everything about that was great. I loved the idea that, they were going up against another version of Loki that was just causing the TVA so many problems. I love the female version of him, Sylvie. And I also love just the mystery around her. We see her get abducted as a kid from Asgard. And there's a point where she asks the the headmistress or the judge or whatever her name is,
Renslayer.
Renslayer, why did you basically she's taking her to her death, and she's like, before I die, why did you take me? What was the Nexus event? What was, why did you have to pluck me from my existence? And Renslayer was like, just coldly, I don't even remember. And that was just
almost sinisterly, like the smile she had on her face when she said it was like
she took joy in that.
I think I audibly said out loud, "You bitch."
Yeah, that was vengeful. All get out. There were points really like that in this show that I was just like, yes, this show has great writing, has great just great tones about it. There's a lot of really good stuff I liked about it, especially around Sylvie. Doug, what's some of your more spoiler joys about this show, or just anything that you want to talk about?
Well, I absolutely think it was interesting the way that Loki and Sylvie, their interaction, and you really have to kind of consider who Loki is. I mean, has he ever had any true friends, anybody that he could really trust and put out there? So even his relationship with Mobius later on. You're almost like, okay, well, you can trust him so far, but are you going to get the dagger, as soon as you give yourself over to him? So that was kind of interesting to see. You never knew what the true motivation was going to be. It's like, okay, let's get to the end, and then I'm going to stab you, and I'm going to take over the TVA, that kind of a thing. And, is that how Sylvie would have been? Is that how any of the other Loki variants would have been? It's like, hey, we could be an army of Lokis, and we can trust each other because we're, but they're all very different in their own ways. So it was really kind of interesting. I would love to see some of the dynamics of some of the other characters and the other variants, but absolutely the evil Loki, that they were going to go up against, that was fantastic. I mean, it's like, let's go with somebody, all powerful that way. And, just that evilness.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with the direction that we've gotten, you might get that too.
Right.
Because as we saw at the end of the show, the post-credit scene was literally just a promise, like, hey, you're going to get a season 2 of this show. Congratulations. Yeah.
Seth, you were talking about Disney Plus and Marvel experimenting with all these Disney Plus shows. When that stinger came up to say that season 2 was coming, I thought about that experimentation. I thought that, this is the first time they're doing a multi-season show. At the same time, this is also Disney. They've done shows.
It's the first confirmation for sure.
Sure. Well, they called WandaVision a limited series. They called Falcon and the Winter Soldier a series, so there's a potential for that to have a second season, or they might just go into Captain America 4 and that be the sequel. This is the first time they've officially announced it. But yes, I felt that it was kind of an abrupt ending. I felt like this show, compared to the other two shows, felt the most together. The other shows, you definitely felt when COVID affected the storyline that they had to cut things. Yes. I didn't feel like they had to cut things as much with this show. However, I felt the ending was just like, oh, it's done. like what? And then of course they announced season 2. So maybe that's how they chose to do it. Instead of cutting things out of their season, they just chose to do a second season. Maybe a second season was always in the cards. However, I felt it was like, it was an odd way to end the first season. Like, yes, it was a cliffhanger, but I've seen thousands of shows and there's better ways to end it. And it was just ended so, there was like nothing tied up, there was so many loose ends. It almost felt like Lost, like there was more questions at the end of the season than there was at the beginning of the season. And I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing, but I mean, I'm intrigued to see more, of course.
That leads me to my main criticism, and it's not a criticism around this show. It's actually a criticism around the current Marvel strategy. And it's kind of like I said earlier, I feel like this show is unignorable when it comes to the Marvel franchise because there's a lot of information that you're going to leave out. Now, granted, this is based off of like an assumption that the future movies are going to have a reasonable level of, hey, you already know about what's happened because you've watched all of our other stuff. So you're going to understand some of these things that we throw in here. To what degree is that going to become a problem for the MCU? Because we have a shitload of content. Now, to the casual viewer who hasn't seen any of the Marvel films, they could probably come into Loki and enjoy it as its show, because like the callbacks to who he is as his previous character are short. It's enough to get you interested to where you might watch that other content. Falcon and Winter Soldier, not as much so. There's a little bit more stuff. There's a little bit more guts in there that you would need in order to kind of understand where we're coming from when that show began. WandaVision, absolutely no way that you would be able to watch WandaVision without having seen any of the previous content and have like that full experience. And so like, as we are getting deeper and deeper and deeper into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the thing that I am the most afraid of now is that there is going to be nothing but unmissable content from the future. Now, that is not necessarily a problem for me because I don't plan on ignoring any of the pieces of content that are coming out there. Yeah, I saw the negative reviews around Black Widow. I still went to go and see it, and consequentially, it felt like I didn't really need that movie as it goes on. I'm glad that we got it, but if they had never made it, I would not have been heartbroken. I don't think that we're going to get content like that here in like the future storyline that they're trying to tell here. And I'm really worried that it's going to be detrimental to Marvel at a certain point, because like what we're really starting to get into is that this isn't a franchise of films. It's almost just like a long running television show that everybody is constantly talking about. And it's like, well, shit, I got to start from the beginning. It's like, that's 20 gajillion movies that I got to watch now. And however many hours of shows, as a Marvel fan, as somebody who's like as people who are like really big into the franchise, we're eating real good right now. Like
we are,
but the casual viewer to try and jump in, like it's gonna continue to get increasingly more and more difficult.
Well, it's a commitment.
It is a commitment.
Are you willing to make that commitment? And honestly, part of what I would be worried about is the way that everything is expanding, and now you're kind of reaching with Eternals and some of the other things. People know even casually who Captain America is or who the Hulk is. So it was easy for people to jump on with Avengers, but now the whole thing is kind of blowing up a little bit. And so is it tougher to bring people in when, okay, so the first thing I'm going to go see is the Eternals. I have no idea what that is, and
exactly.
I mean,
the problem.
It's kind of reaching, and honestly, over the last few years, you see all the time when, and not just a Marvel movie, but when a movie comes out, and even before the movie comes out, and you get reviews before the public has even seen it, and it's like, okay, the reviews for movie X is so great, we're going to commit to 8 more movies, and this this character is getting a spinoff, and it's like, well, the public hasn't even seen it, and you guys are putting all your chips on the table, saying, let's just keep going, and you kind of get a little bit of burnout. So what path do people follow in the Marvel movies if they don't commit to everything? Do they lose that? Like you're saying, I mean, it is that commitment, and you have to watch everything, to have it all interconnected. So I don't know. I think that it's bigger than it should be, but as long as they're making money, I guess
there's a couple different
go.
There's a couple different directions that I feel like they could go at this point. They could use the branching of this multiverse as a way to kick off a new subset of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where somebody could start like a little bit later on in the series and have all the information that they necessarily need in order to kind of continue on from here. But I feel like they've got a steep uphill battle for that one, or they continue down the road that they've been going and just make it kind of a thing, because it's something that you brought up, Josh, the fact that Kevin Feige had to come out and say, is like, hey, we don't have long-term contracts anymore. I feel like they do, but coming out publicly and being like, hey, we're not going to do that anymore. I mean, back prior to Infinity War, a big thing that people were actually going through in order to try and find spoilers was to actually, like, people were tracking down and trying to find like leaked information about active contracts for the actors involved in those films to find out, like, how much more content do we have coming out of these characters, to starving for information about all this stuff.
Yeah.
And with all the crazy directions that they're going to go on now, that's actually the perfect move to be like, hey, yeah, this one loophole that you guys had to try and, like, Marvel was easily the best at keeping secrets.
Well, there's a lot of people that thought,
and that was like their one out. Now it's gone.
There's a lot of people that thought one of the main reasons we got this Black Widow film is because Scarlett still had a film on her contract and they just needed to get that done. So there's a lot of people that, that think that that's partially why it was throwaway in nature.
Somebody asked her.
Yeah.
Come up in her interviews.
I totally hear what you two were saying, and I agree. I mean, this is an issue that the comics side of Marvel and DC are always facing. How many times have the comics themselves rebooted in order to get people on board? When you have these big mega comic events, and all the comics that spiral out of there, and then they're trying to keep
right now.
Right. They're trying to keep comics mainstream and accessible to all these people. But when people come in and see issue 500 and whatever, 800 and whatever, how accessible is that? And there's no other movie franchise that has 20 plus films under its belt. No other movie franchise in the world. Now, I think there's one thing to consider here, though, is that the reason why Endgame was such success is because they spent a year telling people to get caught up. There is no way Endgame beat every other film in existence and in terms of box office success from just the fans. People came out in droves that had never seen a Marvel film before because they saw this mammoth of an event coming. And they're like, holy crap, the 22nd film of a franchise is coming out, and spent a year binging all those films. They had movie theater events. If you hadn't seen the films yourself, you could go for 24 hours and go watch all the films. Well, it's longer than 24 hours, actually, to watch 22 films in a row.
I gotta look it up. I used to know the hour count to actually watch the whole.
Well, I mean, I can just, unless they were all less than an hour, I can't imagine it was. It has to be. How many hours was it?
47 hours and 51 minutes.
Jesus. Okay.
So Iron Man to Endgame.
Okay, so that's a lot. That's almost 2 days. But that was kind of
it is 2 days basically.
That was the call to action for non-fans, and I think a lot of people came on board. And so now with these films and these Disney Plus films and Disney Plus itself launching after that event, I feel like that was a good nexus event for the MCU to get people on board and to kind of start anew. So I think right now is kind of is the second half of the MCU or the second big. It's not the second phase, but it feels like the second phase because you got all these new fans from the end game point, plus you got all the long-term fans. And so, just like we were talking about with the slow start, I feel like this phase is kind of slowly starting to come together, and these bigger pieces are starting to hit us here in the second half of the year. But I don't think they're worried right now. I think they gained a lot of new fans with Endgame and in prep for Endgame, and just the fact that they keep on going and that they can successfully keep on going, speaks to its success. And I think just more people will be attracted to that success alone. Like, oh my gosh, like almost like Star Trek, or with all the shows and everything that continued to fuel that beast, of a franchise. MCU just has so much content now, and they've got so much more coming out this year with What If and these movies, these 3 movies coming out by the end of the year. 2021 is a big year, but even with Black Widow, I think not doing as much money as they thought it was, or not performing as well as they thought it was. It still had a huge opening weekend, which means people are just begging for more MCU content. And, I think it just speaks to Kevin Feige's leadership. And, as we get into more of this cosmic stuff, I mean, I remember when Guardians of the Galaxy 2 or the first one came out, and, all of a sudden we went from the most craziest thing was a god of thunder, and now we had a talking raccoon and a tree and everything, and people just ate that shit up, and it was one of the biggest movies of the MCU, and that just kept on going. So I think they're in good hands. I don't think they've reached that point yet of, man, you're just getting too far into the weeds. They've slowly built to this, and with Disney Plus, it's even more accessible to people. And just the MCU as a whole has just become this bingeable challenge almost. And I think a lot of people have risen to that challenge.
Well, I think as long as the marketing is there, I mean, they, without a doubt, I mean, they know how to market this and get it to people the right way. You've got to watch it. Like you said before, I mean, it's, they were really pumping, like, go back and watch everything before Endgame. So, yeah, as long as they keep going that way, I have no doubt that it's going to be a financial success. But you just wonder if there's going to be one of those, like you're saying with the numbers on Black Widow, and especially now with, people streaming, or they're going to go to the movies. It'll be interesting to see if they have a dud kind of coming out, how they're going to react to that. I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things. I think they build up so much, and then they're always taking the next step. Okay, well, let's go a little bit further out and a little bit further out. I mean, they're not jumping a mile ahead right now. They're building on it, and they're doing it correctly. But yeah, I just, in my own mind, I mean, I worry about, well, not worry because they're going to be okay, but I wonder how it's going to work out when they get something that just really is not going to resonate with the people. And do people just say, hey, just because it's Marvel, I'm not going to go see this?
Mm-hmm. I mean, that could happen.
Wicked left turn.
Before we go into ranking the shows, we still haven't dived too deep into Loki, but we don't really need to. But I want to hear what you guys' thoughts were on the villain reveal. They waited till the 3rd episode. There was a lot of theories. It could have been another Loki. I mean, that kind of would have fit with the theme of the show. There was a lot of hints to it being Kang. We knew that Kang was casted for future properties. What did you think of the villain reveal? What did you think of the portrayal of this version of Kang and what it means to the future?
Well, if you're a comic book reader, as soon as they said Ravonna Renslayer, you had a pretty good idea that Kang was going to be coming out of the woodwork. So it wasn't a surprise. It was more like, all right, which version of him are we going to get? And kind of like as they explain, like they're very loyal to some of his comic representations in this one. Like there's a shitload of versions of him that he goes into the multiverse war. I actually really liked this eclectic shut-in version of him as he was played. Like he kind of played it perfectly for a character who's been living in this citadel alone at the end of time with only Tara Strong as Miss Minutes to keep him company. Like it's yeah, that was I actually really liked like, and we only saw him in the finale, but I actually really liked the interaction at the end of that episode, simply because of the it would be a detriment to the show on its own, but I really enjoyed it based off of the implications as far as what we were going to get. And it actually tied into like this really cool theory, because obviously one of the first questions that people had around specifically the TVA is like, okay, well, you guys are desperate to stop all these Nexus events. Why wouldn't it cause a Nexus event for the Avengers to be pulling the Infinity Stones out of where they were? Or for Tony Stark to take, for Tony Stark to have stolen PIM particles, or like any of the other interactions that they had that could have made those changes.
Sure.
And simply because the TVA wasn't around anymore in Endgame. That's kind of like that's kind of a big factor here. When so the Avengers go back in time. These are like, and Hulk, specifically Banner, actually talks to the Ancient One, and she describes the sacred timeline as it exists under her knowledge. Now, a character like her may have had an interaction with the TVA at some point, or just had like that level of understanding with it.
Okay.
And the whole thing that I'm getting at too is that the TVA was the villain the entire time, and they've been effectively dismantled at this point. As the events of Endgame unfold, we see Loki escape from 2012 at that point, and he creates a Nexus event, triggers the TVA to come and get him, and then they pull him into the TVA, which operates outside of that timeline, but is inside of, like, he's operating somewhat inside the events of that time frame to a certain degree. We know that time moves differently inside the TVA, but at the rate that they're traveling around, and in relation to the story as it is in the timeline, we're kind of seeing a varying of events. We don't know exactly when the multiverse is created, when Sylvie actually makes that good or bad decision based on however you want to look at it, by killing off Kang, or He Who Remains, as they named it. Like, they never called him Kang in this show, which I was a little bit upset about. Thus then creating the branches. Who, like, if that happened in the timeline based off of like a certain level of chronological order, I mean, we've got 5 years to play with between when Loki escaped, or more than 5 years of time to when Loki escapes, but even more time between Avengers and the events of Endgame. I feel very strongly that the multiverse is actually created prior to between the events of the original Avengers film and the events of Infinity War. So when the Ancient One is actually explaining to Banner about the Sacred Timeline is still intact at that point. When Doctor Strange goes in and is actually looking through all of these realities to try and see which one we win in, he was looking through a bunch of different Nexus events. He was looking through a bunch of different branched realities and what direction their reality was actually going to go into. And so when it comes to season 2 of this Loki show, I feel like that will actually deal with a lot of the post events that we're actually seeing here. Because this show actually was like the first piece of content that we've gotten post Endgame that did not feel like an epilogue, but it was still, but it's still inside of that Endgame timeline, which is kind of unfortunate.
Doug, what did you think of of things.
Yeah, I mean, I'll agree with a lot of that. I guess my criticism, I differ a little bit on Kang himself on the character portrayal at the end. I mean, I get it. It's
just one
kind
of
of, in my opinion, kind of a user friendly, but I'm a guy that likes costumes, so I don't like it just being a guy, being kind of quirky and things. And I get it. I mean, I'm not saying that he played it incorrectly, but in my opinion, I went back and I was reading some of the early versions of Kang in the comics, and it really deadpan back then. But I like costumes, and maybe that would have been too close to Thanos. If you had another big baddie that wasn't a relatable, looked like a human kind of a guy. But yeah, for me, it kind of struck a little bit flat. I was like, I don't want to quite see this yet. I mean, I have a lot of promise. I really look forward to how his portrayal, evolves a little bit, and if we get a little bit more of that backstory and maybe see a little bit of, the other versions of himself and things like that, the implications are there, and I look forward to that. But yeah, to me, it was just kind of, I don't want to see just another guy, kind of sitting back and, I know he's a human, but so we'll see.
I really like the actor Jonathan Majors. I really liked him in Da 5 Bloods, and I thought he was really interesting in Lovecraft Country. When he was cast for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which doesn't come out for another couple of years. So the idea that they're starting to set that up now is intriguing to me. I was really worried about them showing the bad guy in the 6th episode of a 6-episode series. I was like, there's not enough time. I thought that as great as this show was, there was episodes, especially when they were on Lamentus 1, that was just like, this is just filler. I thought that they were just wasting time. So I was really worried when I was like, is this really just going to be a 6th episode series? And we're just now getting the villain in the 6th episode. However, once Jonathan Majors came on screen and he was just this character that I was not expecting. And then after that, then they kill him. And his last lines are, I'll see you soon.
See you soon.
That to me was like, oh, okay, now I'm actually worried about the Kang we're gonna get. If this all powerful dude that's just been playing with everybody's lives, and yet his,
terrified.
Yeah, and we've seen this. We've seen this logic from villains in every type of major franchise, from Star Trek to Star Wars to the MCU to DC. This whole idea of, what we're doing is terrible, but you don't want to see the other version of this. You don't want to see the bad guys who would do this that aren't thinking of your good. You might hate what we're doing, but we are trying to help you out. And so you hate this dude and you hate the things that he's done, but he's trying to tell you that there's worse things that are going to come. And that's the end of the show, is the worst things are here now, And so I did think that worked. I didn't like that we waited so long to see the villain, but the idea that he's just the precursor to possibly the villain of this phase got me excited for the future of the MCU. So I did appreciate that, and I did like his portrayal, and it was definitely a performance from Jonathan Majors that I haven't seen before. He's usually more he's been stoic in the past. He's been less kind of free, and this was just so different for him on screen that I was just thrown by that as well. But it got me excited for the future for sure.
I still think that the TVA was actually the main enemy there. Was the main villain that we were like tangling with the whole time, and Renslayer.
But it was his TVA.
It was his TVA, sure. But they didn't understand what his reasonings were around it. They were simply wiping these realities for a bunch of robots that were kind of doing things that they were under the control of this guy, sure. But as soon as they got the opportunity to realized that it was like, hey, our motives aren't there. Like, you found out who the real enemies were. You found out who the real baddies were, and it was Renslayer, because she found out that it was all a lie, and then she was like, oh.
She was the most disappointing part of the finale for me, because I felt like she was definitely the evil persona on screen, and she was just going back and forth on, she was definitely playing the characters on whether or not she was evil or if she was just as much tormented as everybody else. Her final exchange with Mobius was saying, "You betrayed me," him coming in here and calling her out on her shit. And she was just like, "You're the one that betrayed me." And then she goes off in search of free will. She was evil to me, and I wanted more of an ending for her character. I really don't want this second season of her exploring life and exploring free will. I wanted her to get hers, but maybe she still will. Who knows?
Maybe look into her character history.
I don't want to.
You might be you might get a little happy.
Okay. Doug, any final thoughts before we do this ranking thing?
No, I guess, what were your thoughts on Owen Wilson, on his portrayal?
Oh gosh.
For me, I love Owen Wilson. I think he's fantastic, but he's kind of the same guy that he is in other movies. It's like
I went in hoping for that, really.
I get it. Like I said, I love him, but it's just kind of like he's that same Wedding Crashers kind of guy in a different format. But
he definitely was. As much as I thought that they kind of really fast forwarded Loki's transformation, I loved the broship between them two. I thought that the kiss between Loki and Sylvie wasn't earned as much as the hug between Loki and Mobius. I thought
she totally kissed him just so she could steal that.
Oh, I know that. But all of the shippers, all the shippers out there wanted that so much from the series, and I felt that even if that wasn't the case, that wasn't as earned as Loki refusing to shake Mobius's hand and hugging him instead. Mobius was
top moment for sure.
And Owen Wilson, he is definitely the same Owen Wilson you've seen in every other property, but it kind of worked for the character of Mobius. He was this innocent, naive sucker, and to the point where, again, this is a show about time, and I felt like they kind of rushed his. Again, if I could have taken some of the Lamentus 1 episode out and showed a little more of Mobius's time, and after getting zapped or whatever, and he's pruned. I wanted to see his immediate time in the future, just dealing with his sorrow, dealing with his betrayal. We didn't really get that. When we saw him next, he was ready to burn it all down, and when he got the TemPad from Sylvie and was able to go do that, he definitely put things in motion. But I did like him. I thought that he was that perfect naive person, and you rooted for him.
He was also.
It kind of goes back to what I was talking about before. I think when Loki, he's always been, I want to rule. I want to be the top guy, and so I don't think he doesn't trust anybody. So now he's kind of transitioning a little bit, and now he has Mobius, who this guy's all in. He's like, hey, I know you're probably gonna mess me over in the future, but I'm here for you. And I think once Loki lets him in, it's like it kind of corny, but it's like it's that true friendship. And I'm really, really hoping that there's not a dagger that comes out, in one of those embraces, and it's like, the frog and the scorpion. I'm gonna sting you because I'm a scorpion and that's what I do. But I think it was a genuine, friendship that was building, and I like that a lot.
Well, Mobius opened Loki's eyes, and then Loki in turn opened Mobius's eyes. Right. Mobius went to him, for that confirmation. Is this really what's going on? And Loki opened his eyes. And yeah, they just, they bonded over the TVA, and it was quick, but it was enough. And man, just I keep on going back to that hug. I love the hug. I thought it was great.
You have the trust there because anything that Loki tells him is like, well, can I believe you? I mean, you are the Lord of Lies.
Right.
So he calls him out on it at one point.
It's tough. I mean, you can, like I said, he goes all in, but that could be the ultimate betrayal if it goes wrong. So it was kind of nice. I did enjoy it. I think that I'd like to see that in the future. Where that goes a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was definitely. We've had a lot of naive side characters in all of these shows, but I definitely thought that he did well for his. He earned his screen time, and you want more of him in the future. So, Seth, are you ready to move on, or is there any? Okay, let's do this here. I'm gonna pull this up.
I gotta bug out in like 20 minutes, so we gotta.
All right.
We gotta rank these, but I think I can guess where most of these are gonna go for us. So.
All right, so Doug, these are I just pulled these up here. So what? How would you rank the first 3 entries in the Disney Plus Marvel MCU shows?
I think I have to go Falcon and Winter Soldier first, Loki second, WandaVision third. I liked them all. I mean, nothing to take away from WandaVision being number third, but yeah, I had more fun probably watching the first 2.
Interesting. Okay. Okay. Let me switch this here. Okay.
What was the like the defining thing that put Falcon?
Yeah, between these two
Loki for you.
Yeah.
I think just the history of watching the characters and seeing them, seeing Sam Wilson, kind of step up. I mean, there are so many things I could talk about with that, but I think he definitely deserved the mantle of Captain America and kind of the struggle to let's get the shield back, let's move forward on that, and it just seemed like a more of a fun adventure that I could relate to, probably. So I think I was a little more comfortable with that.
Seth, I'm going to leave yours to the end only because I completely agree with Doug here. That's the exact same order for mine. I thought that WandaVision was great. It had a lot of style, had a lot of intrigue, but I think it shit the bed with the finale. I think if we were supposed to come out of there fearing Wanda and thinking that everybody feared Wanda, they failed on that when they should have brought that home. It feels like they're setting her up as the villain for the future, and if they're not, they should. But I thought that as great as WandaVision was, it wasn't as great as these other 2. And then Falcon and the Winter Soldier, even though it had to cut stuff for COVID, I felt that it was a more contained story, that it had a beginning, middle, and an end. It definitely progressed these characters. It did what these Disney Plus shows are supposed to do. It gave you more to these characters that you wouldn't get on the big screen, and it definitely, fleshed them out more. I felt like they got great stories. Sam is in a really great place. Bucky's in a really great place. And I want to see Captain America 4 based on that. Nothing against Loki. Loki's definitely setting up bigger things in the MCU, but it felt more like, that's what it was, a setup show instead of its own story. And it just, Falcon and the Winter Soldier for me just inched out in the win. But what are your orders there, Seth?
We really just swapped number 1 and number 2. Like,
oh yeah,
Loki was tops for me. WandaVision was at the bottom.
So we all agree with WandaVision, apparently.
Yeah.
And I don't think any of us hated WandaVision. I didn't hate WandaVision.
No, it's just I just didn't enjoy it as much as I enjoyed these others. And part of it was mainly because I felt like they used their first 3 episodes for the weird television show shit. And then they rushed through everything else and then dropped the ball with the finale. I'm just like, I feel like they could have changed things up, and I might not have felt that way. But yeah, it was WandaVision missed the dunk. They didn't stick the landing. I felt like Loki and Falcon both stuck their landings a lot better. I will say that I had my most powerful emotional moment in Falcon and Winter Soldier. At like those moments, like I didn't get any tear up moments in Loki. I got it in Falcon and Winter Soldier when they flash back to Bucky being being released from the Hydra program. That one got me hard, and it still does when I watch it now. Like that clip will come up in YouTube every now and then. I still have to watch that, and it's still kind of hard to fight. I didn't have any moments like that in Loki.
On Falcon and Winter Soldier. Mm-hmm. What bank in America would not approve that loan? The guy is an Avenger. I'm sorry, we just can't give you the loan. It's like, come on.
Well, I mean, also, the guy is
the only thing that we didn't get told is like, is he offering a down payment of some kind?
Right.
Were they just kind of going in here with we don't want to put down a down payment. We want a stupid low interest rate. I've been gone for 5 years, and Avengers work. We kind of destroy stuff. Probably just maybe he had a beef with the bank. Maybe they knocked out one of their big ass buildings or something.
Also, you telling me Tony didn't open up any type of payroll for this group? I mean,
right?
You got the richest man in the world, and nobody's making a dime, even minimum wage for saving the world. Come on now.
Now, years ago in the comics, Spider-Man, and this is a long time ago, back in the 80s, he always wanted to be an Avenger and this was an ongoing theme, because the Avengers got $1,000 a week. And of course, Peter Parker was never making any money. So that was always his thing. I wish I could be an Avenger so I could make $1,000 a week.
That's hilarious. Compared to, so that's $52,000 a year.
Well, that's 1980s dollars there. So.
That's true. That's true. That's good money. It's good money in the 80s.
$1,000 of Peter Parker money is a fortune too.
Right.
But how iconic was it with John Walker with the shield? When he bashing the shield down. I mean that was awesome. I mean that was a jaw-dropping moment for me when I saw that. So
Seth talking about tear-up moments. Anytime Isaiah Bradley was on screen talking about his past was definitely emotional for me. The fact that the show went there, being a Disney Marvel property, that was some heavy content. I mean, the comic that it was based on was heavy. This it was heavy for the character, but it also that. And I'll give Black Widow credit. That plus the stuff with Red Guardian and Black Widow, and the stuff in Incredible Hulk just continues to solidify the fact that it didn't end with Captain America. They've been trying to make that super soldier serum for decades, and I just love that that's a theme. In real life, we had the space race. We were fighting to see who could get on the moon first. But just because America got on the moon doesn't mean the other countries, just destroyed their space programs. There was other things that continued to go. So the same way with the super soldier serum, just because we didn't get the first one in the MCU. Red Skull was technically the first one. And then we had Captain America. And then we've just seen throughout the decades, you have Isaiah Bradley, you have Red Guardian, you have the Abomination. You've got all these super soldier. What's that?
Blonsky, and he's coming back now.
That's right, and he's coming back in Shang-Chi. So
they're hinting towards Red Hulk at the same time.
And they're hinting right. Oh, that's right. We didn't even talk about Red Hulk and the general dude and Black Widow looking sickly as hell.
That is a deep Marvel cut. They really did not address it at all in the film, other than just him looking kind of rough around the edges.
Right. I'm guessing that's coming out in future Hawkeye properties or something else. But
I feel like we're gonna get more of that later. But yeah, and we're gonna get more Abomination in Shang-Chi.
Yeah, so. I'm really stoked for the rest of this year. But this is a strong start for Marvel, especially coming after COVID, man. When we had a lot of things promised and then COVID put that on hold. They could have easily taken this year and spread it out over the next couple of years and gave them some years to work with. But they're dropping a ton of content in the first half of 2021, and I'm super stoked to see what's coming. So
I will say that my ranking would have matched your guys's exactly if I hadn't been such a fan of the comic side of things with like the cosmic level. If I had been more into like the more earthbound stuff, I probably would have had more of a connection with Bucky and with Sam and their struggle. But I was always, I mean, Thor was my favorite in there. So like I had a connection with Loki right off the bat too, when I was reading comics. And so like I was more in tune to that history. And so that show was made more for me than the other two were.
Well, you're going to get that cosmic side of things with Eternals coming up. That's for certain.
Yeah. Eternals is going to be big. I mean, Far From No Way Home is going to be huge. Like, cause we have that movie coming out in less than 6 months, and we have gotten no information. We've gotten no trailers. We've gotten no teasers. We've gotten no posters. We've gotten a title.
We've gotten so much speculation.
Like, so much speculation. And it is specifically because it was confirmed that there was going to be some multiverse shit going on. They wanted to wait until Loki had finished this stuff out to explain why that was possible, why that was going to be a thing. They didn't want it to just come straight out of left field. They wanted that to go, because in Far From Home, they had already hinted at a multiverse and then shut it down. And now they've opened that wormhole back up, and they're like, you know what? We can't go back. We can't tease the multiverse in the second one and then shut it down and then bring it back in the third one without some sort of explanatory like event. And Loki turned out to be perfect for it.
But Doug mentioned this a while earlier in this broadcast about, how, we could possibly get burnt out on things, especially when we're hearing about contracts and future, spin-offs. And before one movie launches, we hear about a whole franchise coming off of those movies. They kind of did that with the second Spider-Man film. I mean, before Endgame even came out, we already knew that there was another Spider-Man film after that. So, I mean, not only did we know Spider-Man was coming back, but that he wouldn't die in Endgame. And I don't think any real person thought that would happen. But the fact that we already had so much knowledge about the second Spider-Man film before Endgame even came out, and now, like you said, we're 6 months away from the third Spider-Man film, we've got so much speculation, but nothing, not even a teaser trailer to confirm it. I'm so stoked on that. I think that means they're just really keeping it close to the vest.
I think Marvel learned from that mistake. Because a big part of that speculation was because like this Marvel-Sony cooperation was so up in the air at that point. Like we didn't know. We didn't know if that thing was actually going to continue. And then that continued on until after Far From Home. And it really came to a head after Far From Home came out, because like Disney and Sony got into that huge spat to where Sony was just like, all right, you're done. This isn't going to, like, we're not doing this. And so that they really had to quiet down on what they were going to be willing to talk about. And then I think, I mean, I know I had said earlier that Marvel was probably the best at keeping secrets. They had a few secrets leaking out. I mean, they had information that Tobey Maguire had been getting talked to and that Andrew Garfield had been getting talked to. And then the more exciting piece of it was that Charlie Cox was getting talked to about reprising his Daredevil role from his Netflix series. And so Marvel was like, you know what, maybe we should just fucking quiet down a little bit. Like maybe just like keep it silent, because honestly, like you said, like you're all stoked now. Can you imagine how stoked you're going to be when the first trailer drops here in probably during the Olympic run? Probably while all these Olympics are going on and TV viewership is going to be super high.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Like it's probably going to be the time that it pops up, and they're going to blow it out by being like, "Hey, there's fucking multiverse now." And we already loved Into the Spider-Verse. Into the Spider-Verse was an excellent animated film. Like it was an excellent film, let alone just animated.
Right.
But, like we got it. Like, we're getting a live action version of that now. Like holy shit! Like really, we could fucking get Miles Morales now in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I'd love to be a
who knows where we could go
in
with
some of
that.
those planning meetings and just have just be listening to the ideas bouncing off of each other. Hey, let's take it this direction. No, let's add on this. I mean, it's got to be so much fun in those meetings.
Or incredibly mind-bending and hellish. And
I can imagine both. I can imagine it being so fun, and then oh my gosh, we got to wait. We got to put this, but it's not. It's 4 years out. We got to develop it. We want to make this happen. We got to make everything else work. I mean, I can imagine it's both. Doug, how excited are you for the rest of 2021 in terms of MCU content?
I love it. And again, I nitpick a lot of the little things, but I'm all in. I mean, my chips are in the center of the table. I love it. I don't think that they've done any wrong. I mean, certainly some haven't been as popular with me as far as the movies, but nope, I love the direction. And again, I kind of grew up in the 70s and early 80s, and certainly Incredible Hulk was great, but the live action Spider-Man and the old Captain America, some of those things were just please do a character right and do justice. And I think that they, so I'm excited to see the portrayals of the characters that I grew up on, and in the direction that they've taken them. It's a lot of fun. Technology has certainly caught up, and it's like, wow, I can't wait to see what happens next.
Do you have any Marvel specific elements around Grand Comic-Con that you're planning? Like, is there anything like anything like specially accentuated for the event coming here in October?
Related to MCU?
Yeah, I mean, I know that you're showing The Last Starfighter. Is there any other like Marvel or even DC properties that you're going to be doing cinematically?
No, we like to do the one movie. Saturday night we have a couple of events planned at the theater, but they're not movies. So we'll be announcing that here pretty soon. Nice. But just a little bit of everything for everybody.
Well, we have What If and Shang-Chi coming in the next 2 months, but then before Eternals and before Spider-Man, we've got Grand Comic-Con, and that is coming in October. I can't wait. I'm so happy it's coming back. I wish you and everybody planning it a great couple of months, because I'm sure you're getting into crunch time with that. And I know you're still open for vendors to sign up, correct?
Yep, absolutely. We've got plenty of room. Just love to have a great mix, and if people are on the fence, I mean, we really are pretty affordable as far as, artist tables and booths, compared to other cons. It's a great way to, just your return on investment is so easy. So, come out, talk to people are there. They want to buy, they want to talk to you about your projects, so it's a great venue to come out and, present your passion.
Yeah. Every year that I've been there, the table next to me has been somebody that this is their first con. And the nice thing is it's an affordable first con. It's Grand Island, folks. It's not hard to find a really cheap hotel there if you don't know somebody in town.
And
so
nice,
the money,
not cheap, bad, like
no, just cheap. I mean, cheap in cost. There's great hotels there that you can get a cheap room there and not pay a lot of money. It's in Grand Island, so it's not far away. And the table prices are very affordable, especially if it's your first con. And the nice thing about about a con, the Grand Comic-Con size, is that you get to feel the camaraderie. Okay, it's not so small and so like unattended that you're just bored for 2 days and you can't help but talk to other people. It's lively. And you have people coming in from all over the place that want to meet you, and they feel like they can talk to you because it's not so big that, like when I go to New York Comic Con, it's 4 days of tens of thousands of people. And I love to talk to people, but I'm always worried if I don't have a second seller at my table, the longer I talk to somebody is another customer that I'm missing. That's not the feeling here at Grand Comic-Con. You get to talk to people, you get to enjoy your fandoms with other people, and then you're also talking to your fellow vendors down the aisle, and you're knowing that you didn't spend a lot of money to get that table. They didn't spend a lot of money, so it's less of a pressure to I can't talk, I can't enjoy myself, I have to make money. You can make money, but you can also have a good time as well. And so if you haven't signed up for Grand Comic-Con and you draw or you write or you create anything, any type of craft or whatever, this is a good place to start off. And it's a great show ran by great people. I can't express that enough. You'll have a good time. It'll be worth your time for sure.
Well, thank you very much. We look forward to having you guys there. I definitely want to see you guys face to face again. I mean, I enjoy our conversations, and we try and be as interactive as we can. We get around, we talk to everybody, and it's a con that's run by fans, and this is our passion. This is not a money-making venture for me. It's not like boy, I got to get all these people in here so I can make X amount. No, it's a free admission event. We cover the cost basically of the rental hall, and but we're not a really little con, but we're not a huge con. So I think we're just at the right size. So it's a lot of fun, and yeah, look forward to it. I'm glad that we're finally back out there again. So no, please come out and come see us.
Doug, where is the best place for people to go to get information to kind of I know that you've got registration available. You said that vendors are also still being accepted. Where is the place to go to for like all the information that somebody would need?
The best place to get information would be on our Facebook page, just at Grand Comic Con. If you are interested in a registration form for either a vendor or artist booth or something like that, just go to grandcomiccon@gmail.com. Just send a request. I'll send you out a registration form. Absolutely send me a message on Facebook if you have any questions at all. More than willing to talk to you and kind of explain a little bit about who we are and why we do what we do.
Josh, let's make sure I'm going to make sure that I get this link in the description for this video when it goes out. And
the page is tagged on our Facebook post. So Grand Comic Con is tagged there, but and here's that email that you talked about right there. So yeah, definitely check this out. It's just Grand Comic Con. Just search that in Facebook and you'll get right to it.
For sure.
So, all right.
I think that wraps us up. Does anybody have any final thoughts? Any final words?
Just happy to see you all. It's good to have stuff to talk about, and I can't wait
Thank you guys very much for having me on today. I appreciate it. And anytime that you want some differing opinions, go ahead and get a hold of me. I'm more than willing to do it. I love it.
Well, I was the odd one out in our ranking this time around, so I got ganged up.
Not
on
by
this time.
much, though. We at least agreed on number 3.
Next time, I promise I will do all of my homework pre-show.
Hey, we talked for 2 hours and we didn't even get into spoiler conversation. So I think Seth and I need to schedule a spoiler episode maybe later this week, if there's time, or
shit all over Black Widow.
Yeah, just because I got to rant, man. I need to rant.
John, you've been wanting to rant about this one. I can feel it.
I know, but
now, I have been toying around with the idea of having a panel at Comic-Con for people that have gripes like that. So maybe come in, let's have a live discussion about hey, let's take questions from the audience. What didn't you like about this? Let's do that.
To be fair, I think that most people that had a gripe with that film wasn't toxic based. I think there was a very small crowd that there was one element of the film that people didn't like that kind of got into some toxic conversations. But this wasn't, I think the most people that had criticisms, legit criticisms, they weren't based on toxicity, which is always good because I don't like it when a fandom turns like that, especially if it's something like, The Last Jedi where they're turning on an actress and not a story element. Thankfully, we didn't get a lot of that. Because that's always something that happens, especially in fandoms this big. So I'm glad we still got so much content that a lot of people can enjoy it. I'm excited about what's to come, and I'm excited for Grand Comic Con. So yeah, it's good seeing y'all.
Well,
appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Nerfers, Doug, you will see us at Grand Comic Con this year. That's the way to go. So if you want to meet us in person, first of all, if you want to meet us at all, I love you. But if you want to meet us in person, you can stop by at Grand Comic Con. That's going to be October 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, Doug, of this year.
Yes,
absolutely. And you can catch that in Grand Island, Nebraska. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you didn't like this video, hit the dislike button. Be honest, we can take it. Don't forget to leave some comments down below. Let us know what you thought of Loki. Let us know what you thought of Black Widow. Try and keep it non-spoilery for the sake of this video. People watching probably aren't going to be looking for spoilers if they didn't get any. And give us your rankings. Let us know. Like, how was your 1, 2, 3 for the Marvel Cinematic Universe shows on Disney Plus this year? Don't forget to subscribe to catch up on future content. Once we're done with our break, we're going to be bringing it right back to you, and we're going to have some new stuff in there for you too. So, until next time, have a good night.
See ya.